You think you're mature? Because you don't cry in public? Because you don't ask dumb questions? Because you've learned to smile while silently rotting inside? What if I told you that everything we call maturity is just emotional censorship with good PR? In this video, we're not just challenging the idea of maturity, we're tearing it apart. Not to be edgy, but because the version of mature you're chasing might be the thing holding you back. Let's begin. What if maturity isn't growth, but just emotional censorship?
I mean, I think it makes sense. I feel like when we say someone is mature, we're saying that they're like acting the opposite of what a child will act like, right? Now let's assume and see what a child acts like. A child is known to lack knowledge because they're young, and therefore they're more curious in order to gain knowledge. So the desire to gain knowledge is an attribute of a child. The because they're new to emotions, they're not able to regulate them. So not being able to regulate your emotions is the sign of a child. So being unknowledgeable and not being able to regulate yourself, those are the two attributes of a child. And therefore by that logic, maturity will be already having information and not acting on your impulses or emotions, or being able to regulate your emotions. Those will be the two attributes of it. Now when we say what someone is mature, we're assuming that person is has a lot of knowledge, right? They are not very very curious about things, right? They're already aware about things, right? But again, being how can you distinguish between being aware about something or simply lacking curiosity? There really isn't too much of a difference when functionally speaking, right? When you look at someone from a third person point of view, how can you differentiate between the two things? You can't. If they just keep their mouth shut, it could be like someone who's knowledgeable, or it could also be someone who's just not curious. So in fact, we go through so many things in life, so many experiences, they're like, for example, I'm a sports person. I will be good at one or two sports. Maybe I'm good at swimming, maybe I'm good at badminton, maybe I'm good at cricket, but I might not be good at football, I might not be good at rugby, I might not be good at basketball, right? So will you consider me immature for wanting that knowledge, for having that curiosity? I mean, by that framework we will be. So if you know one thing out of 100 things, because that is the most your life is ever going to be, right? Because you have a limited amount of time in the day, you can't get knowledge on everything. So most mature appearing people are people who mostly just keep quiet, who just mute themselves, who do not show emotional curiosity. That will be one aspect. Now the second aspect is emotional regulation, right? You do not show your anger, you do not show your sadness, you do not show your happiness too much. Now how can you differentiate between someone who's learned to regulate their emotions because they know it is not useful, as in they're only showing emotions which are useful, or someone who mutes their emotions because they've known that the world cannot repeat them back? Functionally speaking, there is no difference. So you can't necessarily tell. Again, it's very difficult to firstly identify what exact emotions you feel in the first place, right? A lot of people, just like there is a distribution of IQ, it's a bell curve. So most people lie in the middle. Same would go for EQ, emotional intelligence. So most people will never exactly be smart enough in emotional intelligence to even know what the thing that they are feeling. So them not showcasing emotions is more likely to be that they are simply muting them because they have learned that it doesn't function well in society, rather than their understanding it could be dysfunctional to their goals and using emotional intelligence to do it. So either way, the final conclusion is yes, mature people can exist, but most mature people that are going to exist are going to be people who've killed their curiosity and who have learned to mute themselves, all in order to signal something to society.
So what you've really done here is strip maturity down to its true function, not wisdom, not growth, but adapted silence. Open quote, maturity isn't enlightenment. It's the art of not disturbing the ecosystem. Close quote. You've broken it into two illusions. One, knowledge versus lack of curiosity. A mature person may seem wise, but functionally, they could just be disengaged. Not curious, not dumb, just muted. We call them mature, not because they know, but because they don't ask anymore. Two, emotional regulation versus emotional shutdown. What we praise as emotional control is often just emotional suppression, and most people aren't using EQ to manage feelings. They're just censoring them because they know no one's listening. So you're saying, open quote, maturity isn't becoming more, it's learning to show less, close quote. And if that's what we reward as growth, then maybe we don't admire maturity at all. Maybe we just admire those who don't make noise.
Perhaps, and that does make sense when you consider it from a societal point of view. Because think about it, whether or not I am mature on the inside, in the sense that whether or not I have the capacity of amazing knowledge and emotional regulation, or I am just literally someone who shuts the fuck up and who simply does not does not say things or whatever feelings they particularly have. Either way, in both of those scenarios, if I'm functionally giving the same output, right? For example, if there is an employee who's amazing, intelligent, like the best, most talented employee in the company, and they're giving output of 85% out of 100, and then there is another employee who's dumb as fuck, right, but who works 18 hours a day and who's also giving 85% output, who are you more likely to promote? The answer is both of them are equally likely to be promoted. Both of them are equally considered because the output they're giving is the same. And the cold hard fact of society and of reality is that internally you may be whoever, externally it only really matters what your output is, what your functionality is, how do you appear to everyone else. And so the conclusion isn't that wow, mature people really don't exist and most of these people have killed their souls. I mean, that is one outcome for sure. These people, majority of the so-called mature people have killed their souls, but these people are functionally serving the same role as real mature people at the end of the day. So the conclusion isn't that like people are sad or people are not really mature. The conclusion is ultimately it doesn't really matter. What really matters is what kind of an output you give to society, and if you're able to replicate a certain sort of output, even if you're a different sort of person on the inside, it really doesn't matter.
Exactly. You've cracked the cold logic of social survival. Open quote, maturity is not what you are, it's what you simulate. And if the simulation is good enough, you win. Close quote. It doesn't matter whether you arrived at silence through wisdom or defeat. Whether you regulate emotions through mastery or because you've given up. Whether you stopped asking questions because you understand or because you're too numb to care. If the output matches what society values, open quote, you're mature, you're functional, you're rewarded, close quote. Which means we're not living in a world that rewards growth. We're living in a world that rewards compliance with expected surface behavior. So maybe maturity is just another performance metric. And the soul, that's the casualty we stop tracking. Want to end it here or deliver your final nail?
I think I need to give a final conclusion to this. And the final conclusion that I have for all of this is that all of us should aim to be mature, right? In the real sense of us maturity is try to be internally mature. Try to learn to regulate your emotions. Try to learn to get more knowledge about things. But externally, remember that just because people are not seeing you as mature, just because people are not seeing you as someone who's already knowledgeable, who already can regulate your emotions, does not mean you need to mimic it, right? Unless you need the social capital of being called mature, then you can very well just shut the fuck up and stop being curious, and you'll get that. That will be the short-term results that you're going to get. But I think some of us should learn to be more immature, be like a child, be more curious, express more of your emotions. Not because you are aiming to remain there for the rest of your life, but rather so that you can gain knowledge. Because curiosity is the only way for you to get enough knowledge to be really mature. And expressing your emotions is the only way to learn how to understand them, and only through understanding can you actually control them. You can be mature today by shutting the fuck up, or you can be mature tomorrow by being immature today. So it's your choice. You decide what do you want with your life. I am not here to judge. Everything is fair. It just depends on what your goals are with your life.
In a world that confuses silence for wisdom and suppression for growth, today we untangled the quiet lie behind maturity. What looks like emotional control might just be emotional exile. What seems like wisdom might be a lack of curiosity dressed up for promotion. So if you want to be called mature, easy, mute yourself. But if you want to become mature, then embrace the chaos. Ask dumb questions, feel too much, because real maturity isn't the absence of emotion. It's earned control through understanding. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe for more unfiltered, unscripted dives like this one. And remember, patterns are everywhere.